Members of the National Assembly, honorable ministers, the Secretary to the Government, the Chief of Staff, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to sign into law. I would like to sincerely thank the Senate President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and all the distinguished honorable leaders and members of the National Assembly for the expeditious consideration and passage of the appropriation bill. I thank you, distinguished honorable members, most sincerely for your attention. May God continue to bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you.
When former President Muhammadu Buhari signed several bold and sweeping laws during his time in office, they were hailed as game changers. But years later, the true impact of many of those laws reveals a troubling pattern, strong on paper, weak in practice. We begin with 2017 laws. The Compulsory Treatment and Care for Victims of Gunshot Act and the Anti-Torture Act. The Gunshot Treatment Law was meant to save lives by removing the barrier of police report before hospitals treat gunshot victims. But the reality, many victims are still rejected or delayed at hospitals, especially private ones. That delay often proves fatal, but not because there is no law, but because there is no enforcement. The Anti-Torture Act was designed to end inhuman treatment by law enforcement and hold perpetrators accountable. Yet, despite its existence, torture, unlawful detention, and police brutality remain widespread. There are few, if any, successful prosecutions under the Act. The law exists, but it hasn't changed the system. One success story is the Deep Offshore and Inland Basin Production Sharing Contract Amendment Act of 2019. This oil reform law was passed to increase Nigeria's revenue from offshore oil drilling, and it is working. It's been implemented and is in effect bringing more funds into the government coffers. In this case, the law isn't just paper, it is profit. Now to law with promise but little power behind them. The Not Too Young to Run Act reduced the age requirement for contesting political office. It inspired a wave of youthful enthusiasm. But real barriers remain. Lack of political backing, money, and access to party platforms mean that young candidates are still sidelined. The Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Prohibition Act also tells a similar story. It guarantees inclusion and access to persons with disabilities, but enforcement is weak. Many public buildings are still inaccessible, and employers are not held accountable for discriminatory practices. The law is there, but for millions, little has changed. Security-wise, the Control of Small Arms and Light Weapons Act was a response to Nigeria's growing arms problem. The Buhari administration created the National Center for the Control of Small Arms in 2021, a step forward. However, the full legal framework is still incomplete. A permanent national commission was proposed and passed by the Senate in 2022, but is yet to be implemented. Until then, arms continue to circulate freely. And now we turn to Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act of 2022, a significant update to Nigeria's anti-terror laws. It provides a more comprehensive framework to fight terrorism and terror financing. It's in effect, but as always, enforcement is key, and critics warn that misuse of this law can pose threat to civil liberties. The Buhari era gave Nigeria several important laws, but a law is only as good as its enforcement. Inconsistent implementation, lack of political will, and poor institutional capacity continue to block progress. When laws are passed but not enforced, they don't just lose power, they deepen public distrust. The aftershock of power isn't just about what was signed, it is about what still hasn't changed.